Welcome back, everybody. Remember how we talked about there was going to be TVPs all day? We lied. It's going to be TVT coming up next here, and after that, a PvP.
And then one more TVP, close things out. But
that's right.
First, ByuN versus GuMiho. One of these players is going to advance into the round of 8. One of them is going to go to the final match of the day and fight for their tournament life here in the GSL.
I think this is going to be a pretty even fight.
I think so too.
I think anybody who's 100% sure that one guy's going to win over the other is crazy. These guys are both looking very strong. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
I mean, GuMiho has been playing so well recently, specifically in GSL as well. He's gotten, what, 2 back-to-back top 4s, even a 2nd place recently in last year. He's looking fantastic. And oftentimes when I think about GuMiho, I think about somebody that's a TVT sniper. He's one of the scariest players to play in this matchup.
Right.
Up there with, like, Clem and Maru. But ByuN is one of those guys that historically has had GuMiho's number in this matchup, I think because he can kind of play the same game GuMiho plays. GuMiho, he's hard to play against in TVT because he can be so crazy and unpredictable, but ByuN is the same way. He rolls with the punches very well, and so I think this is going to be a really fun match. ByuN versus GuMiho here in the winner's map. First match here on Hekany. Let's get into it.
Okay, ByuN here in the top right, GuMiho here in the bottom left. Excuse me.
You all right?
I feel like I've been poisoned.
Oh man, look at that, by the way. 96 to 145. GuMiho and ByuN. ByuN, maybe even a little bit more favored than I actually thought he was coming into this one.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, it's been, welcome from
Portugal.
Portugal. I've always wanted to go to Portugal.
They had really good egg tarts. I want one of those egg tarts, man.
You came prepared for everything today, State. What was I going to say? Okay, so those stats, like, obviously, they are accurate, but also they're so old, too. You got to keep in mind who's really on top of it now, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's 2 times stats can not really serve you well. One is if there just have not been almost any games where it's like, well, these guys' record is 1-0. I'm like, well, guess it would have to be right for one of them. But then also, if you're going to go all the way back, because there's been periods where ByuN was like the scariest Terran in the whole world, you know? And I'd be curious how much of that is like, let's say, the last 2 to 3 years.
I'm not sure about the last 2 to 3, but I do know that recently ByuN has had his number over the past couple of months. These guys have played in a couple of tournaments, especially online cups too. There's a lot of crowdfunding coming in from the community.
Yeah.
For a lot of these smaller tournaments that happen, you know, on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis that a lot of these folks in Korea like to play in. You get a lot of top talent in these little weekend or daily tournaments that is fun to watch. And so far, GuMiho just hasn't really been able to get too much damage in on ByuN in terms of their series, but it's one of those situations where online is different from offline. Playing in a daily or a weekend tournament is different than coming into a GSL, especially with this new format where we're going every single week. I mean, this is the 3rd week, right? These guys have known this matchup is potentially coming for weeks now. And they've had time to prepare for it. They've had time to practice for it. And so it kind of leads to the situation where the stats, they don't matter quite as much as you might think. And the games also probably aren't going to go exactly as you might expect, even given these players' recent matches, if you look at their histories together in games from, say, a month or 2 months ago.
TVT, by the way, I've really been enjoying as of late. It's proven to be a pretty crazy, explosive matchup. GuMiho going with his Cyclones out here early on. There's so many different types of games you can have TVT on 2-base. I mean, Terran really pretty quickly gets a big array of different units you could tech into, and they all pair differently with each other and function differently when they're in certain types of fights. We are getting the medevac coming out here for GuMiho. The same is true here for ByuN. It's a little bit later. We do also get these situations, and I'm only pointing this out because they're both getting their medevacs around the same time, where you could have them both try to drop or attack into each other and miss each other on the minimap.
I'm wondering now how many Cyclones we're going to see Tasteless, because both ByuN and GuMiho threw down a third gas extremely quickly.
Yeah.
ByuN, even before saturating the natural expansion at all, already built that refinery.
So this is what I was talking about. They're both picking up. So what's actually at home to defend? The Reaper sees that, by the way. ByuN's medevac has been spotted.
Yeah, GuMiho moving in with the double medevac, or not double medevac drop, but 2 Cyclones in this medevac here in the natural expansion. Now 2 Cyclones will soon pop from that reactor factory here for ByuN, but there is a small window where GuMiho actually can get some good damage in. And as you pointed out, Tasteless, that Reaper spotting that medevac moving cross map means that GuMiho is well prepared for the attack back at home, and he's getting a ton of SCVs to start out. I mean, 5 SCVs in a mirror matchup like that one, that is ByuN's worker lead pretty much thrown out of the window. And now we have ByuN actually coming in. This is potentially where that gas went, into a Raven, and he's getting interference matrix as well.
I mean, he still can't mine from this position. You know, the SCV's already GuMiho like really taking control of this game. He might have overdone it a little bit over here. It looks like he wants to try to get that medevac, which actually allows an extra kill on that Cyclone. That's insane. Okay, I don't know if there's a follow-up, but I think it's not the craziest thing to think there could be.
So on ByuN's side of things, he's continuing to reactor out Cyclones. He does have that one Raven. Oh, he's actually going to catch this medevac? Wow.
Yeah.
That is some star sense right there.
Yeah, it comes right out there and intercepts that. We've got some tanks here. Obviously, not having the extra medevac that could have come back home is pretty big. Now we've got ByuN with his own medevac moving out here. It looks like he might try to come over to where the main is. If GuMiho keeps a very conservative posture, he could just intercept this.
Both players adding in a third command center as well, and we're not going to see extremely explosive Cyclone counts in this game. ByuN has pivoted from reactoring out Cyclones to reactoring out Marines. Considering to build Ravens, though, in fact, both players actually getting that interference matrix, so looks like they are kind of gearing up for something that's going to be a little bit more standard in terms of Siege Tank Raven in a TVT, where you try and find the right moments of pounce with disables on the Siege Tanks by leapfrogging in those critical moments, trying to get picks and playing for position, as ByuN just kind of testing the waters right now with this first medevac, and double engineering bay coming in for both players at almost identical times, so no one really should have much of an upgrade window should they both queue those up right away. You know, just a little bit faster with that right now.
We've got actually pretty good moves here, just coming in here and shutting down every SCV that's producing there. He's going to go ahead and disable, excuse me, he's going to disable that medevac here, which can allow him to pin these 2 Cyclones. Beautifully done here by GuMiho.
I mean, that Raven just has so much utility in this matchup.
Yeah. Well, it's a really great setup because it's really punishing that drop. I mean, it started out strong, but whenever you do a drop like that, you want to get in, but also actually get out. Big production explosion over here in the main for GuMiho. We have these 2 Ravens that are parked up by 12 o'clock, I assume. Well, hold on. He's actually going to push out here. I was about to say he might come in and try to drop auto turrets, but if the push is going to come out, it would make more sense to pair those Ravens with the rest of the army.
Yeah, 3 Ravens here for GuMiho, just to the 2 of ByuN, as ByuN is looking to try and get a drop in at the natural expansion of GuMiho, who's a little bit out of position. Now, luckily for ByuN, with that SCV scout, very smart. He is going to spot this push coming into the natural, but with all these Ravens, I'm worried about that army right now that is stuck at the third base, because 2 disables, should they come through, could potentially get a lot of damage done, but this Cyclone drop already wreaking havoc on the natural expansion of GuMiho.
So he's killed off a lot of SCVs. We're already up to 10 over here. Now, that being said, I mean, this isn't anything that can help out with stopping this push. We saw that the auto turrets were baited out there from ByuN, so I think there's still going to be some squishiness there at the entrance. There's a big drop also headed southbound over here from ByuN.
Yeah, that army that kind of got sequestered to the left side of that third base now coming into the main base instead, and ByuN is just starting fires all over GuMiho's base. 2 siege tanks gearing up here in the main base. All the Ravens are at the front, so ByuN, his natural is mostly undefended. He's going to throw down as many auto turrets as he possibly can to try and hold on to this. Disabling the siege tank on the command center as well. Is ByuN going to have enough to actually hold this natural expansion? Keep in mind, GuMiho, he's lost 40-plus SCVs back at home right now. The SCV is getting the surround with the Marines and the Viking.
Whoa.
Barely enough to hold on.
Dude, that was a great game.
Wow,
that was really interesting. So, like, even with that final push, I'm like, wait a minute, if he had maybe, like, you know, 50% more Marines there, he probably just kills all the SCVs and maybe wins that game. But it's so funny. I had totally misread that game in this final moments. I thought, okay, ByuN is probably dropping too much, and maybe GuMiho is mustered enough, but no, completely not the case.
I mean, the fact that GuMiho's force in the front, as you said, did not have enough Marines means that the SCVs, ByuN can sacrifice them in that position. They don't matter too much. He's killed 40 SCVs back at the home base of GuMiho and was potentially going to get even more. So just some incredibly tactical play coming out from ByuN. He maneuvered in those final moments so beautifully, knowing exactly when to come in with the drops of the Cyclones and the natural expansion, and then adding an additional drop in the main base in this really tight corner with 2 siege tanks that are so difficult to dislodge without Ravens. And GuMiho just kind of fell under the pressure. I mean, he was forced his hand to attack into the natural. It floundered, and that's ByuN taking a very decisive game number 1.
Gotta love TVT, man. You know, casting this alongside ASL, I gotta say, StarCraft 2 TVT is so much better.
ByuN, the blue Terran in the bottom right, leading the series 1-0 to his opponent GuMiho, the red Terran in the top left. And we were talking a little bit about this before the show Tasteless, about how these two are going to stack up, because I think we both kind of keyed them in as the 2 favorites to advance from this group. So many fans out here in the audience, by the way. Actually a pretty big crowd for a round of 16 match, I must say, especially with like no Maru, no Dark.
Yeah. It's fun. I'm glad. I mean, there was a dark period where we didn't have audiences for a while during the COVID pandemic, so it's good to have everybody back in here and things are back to normal.
Dark period where we're stuck in a green room as well for that one season.
Oh, that's right.
I do not want to
remember.
remember.
Before our GSL comeback story started.
Yeah, but going back to the point that I was making before, as we talked about at the beginning when we got into the studio today, is that one of the reasons why it feels like ByuN is kind of GuMiho's kryptonite in a matchup that GuMiho is one of the best in the world at executing TVT, is that GuMiho is a very cerebral player when it comes to strategy. He thinks out of the box. He has his own different perspective on how matchups should be played, how the Terran race should be played. And ByuN is kind of on the other side of that. He doesn't exactly play standard, but he's much more tactical as opposed to cerebral. He's very good at finding out how to get maximum value out of small groups of units in ways that you would not anticipate. Like coming into the mid game with that double Cyclone drop, with the 2 siege tanks lodging themselves into the main base there of GuMiho. And those are the kind of plays that, in a matchup as volatile as early game TVT, can just straight up kill you, as we saw there in game number 1. And so for GuMiho now coming in, I'm wondering exactly what adjustments he's going to make from game 1, if any. Is he still going to try to play his own game? Is he going to try and preempt some of these creative tactics and maneuvers that, ByuN is inevitably going to throw at him? I can't wait to see it as these Reapers battle. I almost thought for sure ByuN's Reaper was going to die there, but some nice control.
Wild, by the way. He's going to try to come in here and intercept. You can see GuMiho gets close and says, no, that's too predictable. So he decides to back up. We have the factory about to finish over here for GuMiho. ByuN a little bit ahead of him here as far as that development. And it's going to be a 3rd CC for GuMiho.
Yeah. So GuMiho, with that 3rd CC, tells me that he's just going to try and play a much more passive game and maybe just parry the attacks on the command center finish in the perfect moment, by the way. Able to actually garrison that SCV there, and even traded out here for potentially both Reapers. Oh, the Hellion wasn't able to get the last shot off. Luckily, this Reaper will be able to chase it down, but not before GuMiho does get a pretty good scout. Able to check both gas geysers, click them, see exactly how much has been mined, and he should know, based on that opening, that there probably isn't a 3rd command center for ByuN. Almost certainly not going to be one. And that's pretty much all the scouting information you need here as GuMiho, if you are actually able to glean that from the limited information he did get.
So ByuN is going to have some opportunities to come in here and start to drop. This medevac's almost done. He's going to have a Cyclone and 4 Marines, plus the Hellion and the Reaper out on the map. There's not any real muscle here, although I guess the Cyclone for GuMiho is going to finish. But we really want to watch that Cyclone here from GuMiho. and see if he can keep that alive.
We're going to poke here in the main base, and ByuN will get confirmation that this is a 3CC opening. Even sees the Cyclone pop right at that moment, and that's going to keep ByuN in on the Army position just a little bit here. And I'm wondering where that GuMiho Cyclone is going to be, because at this stage in the game, this early on, GuMiho, he cannot cover all of his bases. And so this Cyclone drop coming into the natural expansion, barely out healing those 4 Marines with that medevac.
Just a little bit more sustain.
Yeah, and that's nice. I mean, these are the kind of small snowbally moves that can really play to ByuN's advantage if he's able to keep the pressure on. Anytime you trade 1 or 2 Marines for 3 or 4 Marines and some SCVs, especially against this 3 command center opening like this one, you're opening up future opportunities to come back and get even more damage done with future harassment or even a timing push.
Dude, this control is so good on both sides, by the way. Pulling the SCVs away at the last second, even keeping that Hellion alive for that long. Well, you know, that Hellion really served as a great distraction to keep GuMiho kind of safe back at home. ByuN will probably come out with another attack pretty soon here. I do think there are still some opportunities for ByuN to try to come in here and really sink his teeth into the position that GuMiho is in. GuMiho really needs the game to go on for a long time, but since ByuN invested in an army off of 2 bases, I think there are still some moments he could try to take some fights. But if GuMiho can play the long game, he should be ahead the further you know, the timer goes on in this game.
I'm wondering if he's going to get a chance to play that long game, though. Luckily for GuMiho, he is able to catch this Liberator, so not too much harassment will get done. ByuN turns around to attack it just once before he leaves. But ByuN is really committing to this push, and I've been watching the production tab. He's about to have 4 Vikings on the field to GuMiho's 1. So air superiority with 4 Vikings plus an albeit damaged Liberator is a lot to contest here for GuMiho. And if the siege tank creep is able to work here in the natural expansion, we're going to see at the very least a contain, and at the very best here from ByuN's perspective, a lot of infrastructure damage coming through on the side.
He's not quite in range of the ramp. In fact, okay, he can get that reactor. I wasn't quite sure. Sometimes when you get these big zoom out shots, it can be hard to tell. So, I mean, look, getting the reactor is actually pretty big. Reactors take forever to make. But the fact that he's going to lose the air fight, and now he can set this Liberator up here.
Yeah.
And if he can get over the ramp, okay, the tank is barely saved. You can one-shot Marines, as you can see there.
Yeah, 1 tank already fallen.
By the way,
GuMiho is repairing these 2 now.
Stim is almost done. Stim is almost done. He's going to land the Vikings just to tank.
Stim is done here for GuMiho, but he only has 2 Marines on the map. I mean, these siege tanks are getting so much work in the Liberator, sieging up again.
ByuN is too good. That was crazy.
Some of the fastest TVT games where you see it, you can see ByuN. He's pumped up about that one, man.
Dude, that was wild. You know, it's funny because TVT, I think it's so interesting in the early mid game, but like sometimes you just see one player so much better than the other. It's like, man, how deep does the rabbit hole go?
I mean, ByuN just had complete air control there, and GuMiho with a couple of missteps in the siege tank positioning, losing a tank at the ramp and then getting caught out of position at the natural. ByuN is not the kind of player that is going to let that opportunity go to waste, and he just basically mopped the floor with GuMiho in these series. I mean, they were fun, action-packed games, but they were over pretty quick.
Yeah, really commanding performance. We're going to go to an interview now with ByuN and see how he is feeling. Congratulations, he says thank you. Today, a lot of fans that you were, that your play was crazy today. It looks like you're back in your prime from before. You look like 2016 ByuN. How do you evaluate your performance today? I'd say 8 out of 10.
Typical answer.
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's any specific game I would have given 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 today. JYP just said it was really impressive. So this time around, I came to the studio extra early to warm my hands up and get comfortable, and I think it paid off. Did you feel any pressure today? Yeah. Usually I always feel some pressure in any offline match.
진짜 연습을 진짜 많이 해가지고
Usually I'm a little bit more nervous.
경쟁한 상대의 경기력이 상대 선수보다
좋아요.
상대 선수의 경기력보다 더 나은 경기력이 돼야겠다 생각하고 제 베이스 실력을
So I
좀
thought even though I'm very
늘려야겠다고
nervous,
했거든요. 그래서 연습량을 좀 늘린 게
I just have to
많이
focus
중요했던 것 같아요.
and just
기존 그 강자들이
Sorry.
8강에 올라가는 모습이
not going well, guys.
Focus on his performance and trying to
Yes, try to
carry
focus.
himself through the quarterfinals.
Yes.
Yeah, that was tougher one.
이번 시즌 좀 어떨 것 같습니까?
근데 솔직히 16년
So a lot of fans want to see
스스로
the glory days of the old ByuN come back here.
이제는
What do you say to that?
저도 안 꺼내거든요. 이제
Wasn't that like 8 years ago?
2024년으로 16년이 아니라 2024년으로 조금
I haven't even looked through those VODs in a long time.
괜찮은 것 같아요.
오, 괜찮아요.
좀 괜찮아가지고 마지막 경기 빼면은 그래도
But after this, the games today, I have a really good feeling about the season. So
마음에 좀 쏙 들어가지고
especially today.
느낌이에요. 네.
Yeah, I'm very happy with my performance. So anyways, yeah, I've got a good feeling for the season.
옆에 가서 사진을 같이 찍는데 형은 이러는 거 없죠라고 했던 그때 그날의 분위기. 우와. 현현 혹시 기억나나요?
그렇죠.
그럼
I remember seeing you raise up your championship title. We took a photo together.
네, 네.
And then he says, this is Castor Park to JP. He says, you never had those moments, right?
이 자리를 빌어서 뭐 진영이 형한테 진짜 죄송하다는 말씀드립니다. 그렇게 또 됐으면 좋겠네요. 이번에도 뭐
I want to apologize to what I said to JYP back in 2016. But anyways, I want to hope, yeah, let's see if I get that glory back from 2016. And then he said, actually, I'm going to say that to JYP. What is this interview?
I don't know, man.
일단은
Anyways, you've got a lot of international fans watching. Anything you want to say to them?
언제인지 기억도 안 날 만큼 오늘 칼퇴근하게 됐는데 이렇게 오늘 경기력으로 보여드린 것만큼
Can't remember when was the last time I made it to the quarterfinals, coming out first. But as you just witnessed today, performance today has been pretty good. So be expecting another great performance here in the quarterfinals. I'll be practicing as hard as ever for the GSL. No, not just for the GSL, for the World Cup as well. So I'm going to try to bring primetime ByuN back. So there's also Maru in Classic. What do you think about them? You don't care, do you? No, I do care. I care a lot. On some level, I was almost thinking it'd be nice to advance second out of the group so I could avoid them. But anyways, I'm happy I saved my spot in the quarterfinals. Anyways, so if you're going to raise the trophy, no matter what, you'd have to defeat everybody. I know there was a point in time in my career where those players were below me because I was on top of the world at once. Well, anyways, congratulations, ByuN. He says thank you.
That was a long one, Tasteless. Good
That
job.
was my GSL finals, getting through that interview. Cool, guys. Coming up next, PvP. Let's get rid of one of them. Nightmare vs. Creator. We will be right back.